Thanks for joining Single Mamas today, Faith, to discuss the topics of being employment ready. And this is our session 1. So I'm excited to have you here. And I'd really like you to begin by just giving us some background on your experience with the recruiting and staffing industry.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And this is an area that I've spent a lot of my career. So I've spent over 20 years in the recruiting and staffing industry. And so I started out in an entry-level role as a recruiter, and I worked my way up into management. And so I've worked for very large corporations that have had like over 55,000 employees to really small boutique firms. And it was a field that I didn't even know about. I did not plan on going into this area after college. I actually had gone to an agency just to find work. And then as I watched others in that process of interviewing, I really got interested and applied for a job and ended up spending my whole career there. So it ended up being kind of my sweet spot right away. But I have spent a lot of time interviewing candidates over the years, and right now, over the last 8 years, I actually started my own company. And so that was somewhat of a dream of mine back in college, and so that has been really exciting. And I started my company actually in a down economy. And a lot of people had told me to not even try because most businesses, they said half of them fail. But it had been something I really prayed about, and I really felt God's leading, and it ended up being very successful. So I was really glad I did that. And over the course of my career, I have interviewed so many candidates. It's somewhere over 20,000 so far, and I know I'll be interviewing a lot more. But why I even mention that is that I have heard so much feedback from hiring managers and business leaders as they are interviewing candidates for specific roles. And they have given me reasons as to why they would choose one candidate over another throughout the process. And so with that information, I've actually been able to help coach a lot of candidates and help them through that process and kind of give them tools and different resources to help them along the way.
That's really exciting. And we're going to touch on a lot of these things you just even now mentioned as far as the interviewing and the process and even starting your own business and all of these things in a number of sessions that we have planned to do here. But we're going to start out today and looking at how do you go about finding a job or changing your job during this time of COVID with all that's been going on and maybe changing careers? What advice do you have for our moms out there that will help them in this current job market?
So right now, during this COVID season and during this time, it is actually probably one of the better times in our workforce as far as opportunities that are across the entire country, is with companies now having to go virtual, which is something that I would say maybe half the companies that I work with in the US have allowed some flexibility in employees to use technology and do virtual work. But with COVID, they had to allow everyone to work from home mostly, unless you were an essential company and had to be in the office. And so that has really leveled the playing field. And so I know there's so many individuals that live in rural areas that have had challenges of trying to find work that they can do remotely and that they can be in professional settings. I mean, some towns, they may take a job at a restaurant or at a convenience store, or there hasn't always been a lot of opportunities in smaller communities. So I think that has really leveled the playing field, that you don't only have opportunities in your current area, you can look all across the US. So I think this is a time where you can really reflect and think about, what are the dreams that the Lord has given you? What are the dreams that are in your heart? What are the areas that you've always aspired to do, but you maybe didn't have the opportunity, or you had to just take a job quickly?
So where do you begin then? Where do you suggest a mom who's like changing careers or looking at where to begin in a job hunting process? Where should she begin?
I would start, this is just something that I personally recommend. We think we know sometimes where our strengths are, and sometimes we're right on, and sometimes we might be a little off base. That I think it's really helpful to take assessments. And there's so many out there. And I have found just over my career, over the last 10, 15 years, there is a assessment called the StrengthsFinder. And it is done by Gallup, so it's a very valid assessment system, and companies use it all across the US. And so in this assessment, it has 34 strength areas. And they're the strengths that we all have to a certain degree, but it ranks them. And you can take a free assessment through Cloverleaf. So if you're having a tight budget right now, you can go on Cloverleaf and take a free assessment. It's a mini session or a mini assessment. It's about 5 minutes, 10 minutes long. And it will rank your top 5 strengths. And I think it's very helpful. You can find information out on Google or actually buy the book. It's a very low cost. And it will really help direct you as to, with the strengths you have, what are the different areas that you would excel in? What are the positions that would come easier for you, you would get more energy from, that you would be a lot more successful? And I think that that's what so many of us are looking for, is to actually find opportunities that fulfill us. We spend more time at work than we do our own families. And
Yes.
so if we can find a role that is something that really is using our God-given talents and strengths, and we can be successful, I think we find a lot more fulfillment and enjoyment in life.
I agree. Sometimes we have to just take that job that's there just to pay the rent and put food on the table. But we need to always, I believe, as single moms, especially, just be thinking ahead of what we can do differently and how we can move forward with our life in a different way. We don't have to stay in the place we are. Sometimes I feel we just get stuck and we think, this is all I have, this is all I can do, this is all I'll ever be. But God has so much more for us. And when we trust in Him and do these kinds of things and take the assessment, it might be like, oh, I'm a little afraid to do that because I don't know what the results will be. But it will help us and strengthen us and help us to move out into new areas. It's always scary to do something new. But boy, when you do it and then you find success in it, it's such a great feeling.
There are so many different opportunities that many times we don't even realize are available. For example, if you are, say you're a waitress in a restaurant and you're wanting to get into more business hours, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, so you have your evenings and weekends with your family, you have learned outstanding multitasking skills. You are presenting desserts and using persuasion to entice your clients. So a lot of those same skills are used in sales or in account management, where you can earn commissions. There are so many roles that I was unaware of, even working in the industry that I am. The first 5 years I worked in that industry, I didn't even know that I could work for a company and earn commissions and actually increase and even double or triple my income. And so those were things that I learned along the way in my own process, and I have been able to coach and tell a lot of others. And sometimes you're able to jump into that role right away and transition, and sometimes this takes time. Or you may be in a season of your life where you may need to just stay put for a while, but take a class. Like say if you were a teacher and you were wanting to get into marketing or maybe technology, taking a class is very helpful. It's also a great way to meet others and managers from different companies where you might land a job. Also, volunteering. It's amazing how much experience, if you volunteer in an area, they will train you and you can develop skills that you can add to your resume. And there's a number of different ways you can do that to help transition and be promoted to higher roles and be able to make more income for your family.
That's really awesome. And thinking about that, there's a lot of companies, even food service companies and places that pay for your education. And that's a simple check into it. Maybe they aren't advertising it, but just ask, do you pay if I want to go on in my education? And many of them do. And I know that there are some community colleges that also offer at least a first class without charge to people that haven't been in school for a while. So there's options for furthering our education that will really help as well.
Absolutely. And even using YouTube, there are so many, when I've spoke at different single mom conferences, I would get a hand raising as far as different interest areas. And I would say about half the group is very interested in technology type roles.
I believe it.
And there is so much you can learn on just going out to YouTube,
Wow.
looking at networking and writing code and so on, that people who are in that industry, it is constantly changing, that is how they keep up in their roles and keep up in their industry, as they're not going back to school over and over. They are actually just going on YouTube and getting trained at night, so they can keep up in their field. So there are individuals that if you can just take time, like after the kids are in bed, and maybe dedicate a half hour each night in whatever area of interest, even doing that alone will equip you so you could apply for a contract position. And then as working as a contractor in a corporation, that will give you the experience to either get hired there or add it to your resume and land a regular full-time job down the road. So those are all great options to help people further their career and get in the areas of their strengths.
There's so much we can cover with this, and there's so much we want to cover. We're going to do several sessions. We're not just going to do one or two. We're going to get into the specifics, into how to present yourself in an interview, how to get the interview, how to get your online application to the top of the pile with all of them that are coming in. There's so many things we're going to be discussing in our upcoming sessions, and I'm really looking forward to that. Do you have anything else you want to add before we close out this session?
I think that, just mentioning that we're going to be offering different resources and different tools that are really going to help people as they further their search, and, look at this as an opportunity. This time, I think this season is really opening up as I mentioned, the playing field. And I think that there's going to be more opportunities than we've ever had before. So I think this is a good time to think about, what are your dreams? What are the things that the Lord put in your heart, maybe several years ago? And start looking at what you want to do next. What is your next? And then we'll talk about different steps and stages to take to taking that to the next level.
That's great. Well, as we post this, we'll be listing books and websites and things that you cite. So people, if you don't catch it during the podcast, you can go to our Facebook page, Single Mamas, or our website, which is singlemamas.org. And you can find these resources, books, things that we'll be discussing during these chats that we're having. I just want to say thank you, Faith. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for loving single mamas. I know you were a single mom for a time, so you know what it's like as well. And I just look forward to our next podcast. And thank you. We'll see you soon and talk some more.